Anyways, thank you for being here. Maybe first explain who the fuck you are.
Arai. Well, I'm going to
No,
explain
no,
who I
you first.
am. I'll go first. I'm Andy. I run a hobby hosting company called Minestone Hosting.
Awesome. And Arai?
And I am Arai. Technically, I do big data if they were publicly traded at Fortune 50. And I am technical support and, let's say, consulting for said hosting company.
All right, awesome. And I am Lunar. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Anyway, welcome to the podcast. Andy, for people who don't know, is the person I talked about at the end of my previous our previous video about how to spot a good host. They also were the one who reached out to me saying like, "Hey, there's some things you really need to be talking about." He was one of the inspirations to talk about bad hosts and how to spot them, and not using the term summer host for so long. But maybe explain a little bit how you started in getting into the hosting scene. You mentioned that Araya was one of the reasons you guys, Andy got into it. Maybe explain how that happened and how you guys got to know each other and stuff. The background.
Well, background is that basically I was like everybody else at first. And when I say that, what I mean is I was like the typical teenager hosting a Minecraft server on his computer and releasing his public IP address on Planet Minecraft.
Awesome.
For everybody to see. No security, no anything, just living in my parents' house, posting my IP address to everybody. Then I came across a streamer with Arai in that stream talking, and basically joined a public chat with everybody, and that stream has long been stopped for a long time, since 2015. And me and Arai continue talking.
I think Rev actually streamed last in like 2018 or so.
Yeah, somewhere around there. But minor details.
Yeah. We've known each other since 2015, so 10 years at this point.
Awesome.
And we're both minor characters in a Minecraft streamers modded private Minecraft server.
Yeah, and we go on and continue talking to each other privately as well. And Arai made me see the light, and I started using Linux for my Minecraft servers, and that's when I began to learn the command line and terminal and how to manipulate it to do the things that I want to do.
You would basically ask a question, and I was like, okay, how do you think that's going to work? Go for it.
Yeah, because Arai here is a very firm believer on self-learning. So going off and doing your own research, Arai not doing it for me, and I had to put up with the constant asking questions and getting the response of, go do it yourself. So then I went on to form a, like everybody else, kind of high pixel-ish kind of survival SMP that was using waterfall or velocity or bungee cord back then, as it was called.
Yeah.
Hosting a little thing called Minestone Network. Then I came to the realization that's not going to work, and then moved on to start Minestone Hosting back in 2019. And then in 2024, May the 4th, I think it was, or May the 24th, one or the other, I shut down Minestone Hosting and started running as a hobby because I had a few of my clients contact me asking me to continue doing it, please, because they really enjoyed my hosting and I'm the only one they really trust to continue running their services for them.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Because in my previous video, I think you had some concerns about me making it seem like you're doing this in a hobby sense. Is that that server slash hosting thing you do privately still hosted as a professional company?
It's not hosted as a professional company, and it really depends on what you consider a It really depends what your definition is of professional company. Now, do I need a website? Do I need all this flashy stuff that everybody else has?
No, but I meant to say as in a how do I best explain it? It's run in a way that isn't at any way, shape, or form a risk for any data or anyone using your service.
As far as
It-
I handle clients and
it-
stuff like that, I run it very professional.
Yeah.
I run it
it's
like it is a company,
Yeah.
basically. I'll let you,
so
Arai, you can talk. Go.
I think the question specifically is there professional liability protection? The idea that you're a registered company and you're a target that could be potentially be sued if there is a data breach.
We do not currently have an LLC, no.
Well, no, it's more like a you're not running it like little Timmy who for the first time ever installed Pterodactyl and then just like it's fine. Like again, this is fine. Like I explained in that video as well. I think there's a difference between doing it as a hobby or in your case doing it privately for people who are already satisfied with your service and not because I think you mentioned you don't want to deal with the amount of people complaining about whatever.
Pricing.
Yeah, pricing. Yeah.
Pricing was my biggest thing. And
It
as I
and
told you privately, I was in kind of a rut, can we put it,
Yeah.
where Minestone just wasn't working as I would want it to work. And then as far as Minestone now, it's not run. It's run professionally. I treat it like I'm running it like a company.
Yeah.
And I don't like I said in a private call, I don't like the word hobbyist because people misrepresent that word and they think because I'm running it as a hobby, I don't take it seriously.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
There's a negative connotation to the term hobbyist, and
Yes,
it
yes.
is technically strictly a hobby, as in it's not being run as a for-profit business would be run. So you don't have stuff like infinite number of nodes, increasing the number of nodes to respond to growth. Those patterns aren't there because it's really just about keeping focused on one node and keeping the service level really high.
Yes. And this is why we have people currently queuing, waiting for services with Minestone Hosting.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that answers that question.
Yeah, because to bring it back to a hobby I'm very passionate about. Not that I'm not passionate about hosting, but like a hobby I'm very passionate about. Which is Warhammer. We have a lot. I think I told you this in the private conversation as well. We have people who like to put the miniatures together, paint, and then go to battle. But we also have people who don't like to play the game but like the miniatures, or people who don't like to paint miniatures but like to play the game. Right. So there are hobbyists who, for a price, will paint up and assemble your miniatures for you. We also have official companies do this, but we have hobbyists as well. The quality doesn't really vary here because if a hobbyist does a way better job than a company does, that's good. But that's the way I was looking at it. That it's still like you're doing it in the best way you can, and providing your services for a pay to other people who might be hosting or are satisfied enough with your hosting in previous, I think, years. I don't know how long you've been private for, but previous times that they still want to be a client or a client in quotation marks at your privatized service.
Yeah, and I think what the biggest thing is what we differentiate from other companies. I know other companies or other hosting providers can't do this, but I think it's the one-to-one support that they really appreciate.
Yeah,
It's like really bespoke, really hands-on. We'll customize your server, figure out why it's lagging, manage plugins, that kind of thing.
And it doesn't cost them anything.
Well,
Yeah.
no additional cost, yeah.
No additional cost. So I'm the only thing I'm charging for is based on how much RAM they need, and that's it. I'm not charging them for the support. I'm not charging them for anything else but that.
Yeah.
I mean, we have an event coming up with somebody. I'm not going to name names, but we have an event coming up, and I've offered them a temporary free server so they can host their event, and then that server will be removed. They're a current client with me,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they're already paying for services, but they wouldn't only need that server for 3 to 4 days, and I've offered them no charge. They can run their event, and we'll move on from there. And I'm going to help them optimize it, etc., and make sure the event runs smoothly.
All right. Yeah, I mean that's for me. I understand where you're coming from. That the term hobbyist has a little bit of a bad term, and I did not meant to describe you as someone who just quote unquote does this for a hobby. You seem to actually want to do this right and offer a good service, but just not like publicly, right? Because that brings all the extra hassle of people hammering you about prices, like you mentioned, or other stuff, and competition being on your ass, trying to snipe people away from you. Well, that's a lot of stress you may not want to be dealing with, and if your service is still okay, falls between in norms, nobody's at risk of you losing data, and everything runs fine. What's the issue then? You know what? That's what I meant, because you're a sys administrator in your daily life. I've gathered.
Yep. Yes, very much so. I'm not
So
going to disclose too much information
no.
about who I work for,
Okay.
etc. Obviously, but as far as system administration, yes, I do it in my daily life.
So you would know what you're doing. So I don't think
Yeah,
like the term summer host, as I mentioned in that video, is being thrown around by everyone and anyone for different definitions, and I don't think that applies here.
no, absolutely not. I don't think I come under the terminology of summer host.
Have you been called summer host all the time?
Only recently by you.
Yeah.
Wait,
Have
what?
I?
I don't think so. Like,
When I say by you, I don't mean directly.
Okay, yeah.
I mean,
let's say
I watched your
classified.
videos. Yeah. I watched your videos, and I thought, is that the kind of terminology that I'm coming under?
Yeah.
And that's when
It's
I
like,
contacted you.
yeah, it's like the way that you're classifying summer hosts and the way that Mindstone, like it's almost like you're describing Mindstone with the
Yes.
classification process you came up with. So I think that's
Yeah.
the origin of that.
Yeah, the classification you came up with, no website, sells through Discord, etc., and that's Mindstone.
Mhm.
And that's why I was like, is he calling me a summer host? Because the way I see summer host, and I know we're going to be talking about this later, but the way I see how summer host being is you're describing this person as somebody that doesn't do their job.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
again,
they're doing
totally.
it just to make a quick buck and run away.
Mhm.
And that's not what we're here for.
I think one of the reason that that's a really sensitive subject here also is that a lot of the competition that we were facing coming from people like was actually coming from summer hosts, and that you had these hosting providers that pop up in the summer. They're selling their RAM like through the floor price wise, and it's like that is so difficult to compete with when you're actually trying to provide a high value product.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And especially when
people
you're
would come
trying
to me
grow
all
a
the
company.
time. People would come to me all the time saying, "Oh, this host is cheaper. This host is selling it for this amount. This host is doing that. This host is doing this." And it's like, okay, well, you go host with them, and then we'll move on from this topic. Like, it didn't bother me. Like, why are you coming to me
Well,
telling me that these guys are cheaper than me? You wouldn't go into a public store and say that, would you? You know what I mean? That was the frustration there.
Well, and then the other thing is that it is demoralizing. Like having that level of churn is demoralizing. Like especially when you're operating as a sole proprietor and you're trying to have that growth mentality and actually trying to bootstrap a larger hosting provider. When you have that continual churn of not being able to rely on these customers, that makes it difficult. And then additionally, because there's this like lower expectation of quality of hosting, I think that even negatively impacts the consumers of Minecraft hosting, because they're used to, sure, the prices are cheap, but the quality is also horrible. And so you have this double-sided race to the bottom where both the service providers and the service consumers are thinking to themselves, what's the point?
Yeah.
So
It's also an issue that there's no direct definition of a summer host. Excuse me. People often say like, "Oh, there are the kids that just do it, just do like this thing in the summer to make a quick buck," and then there's people saying every host that isn't okay or doing shady practices as a summer host, which it is not. Is just a bad host. You need to call bad host, not summer host. But people often, it's also just a lack of general knowledge when it comes to these kind of things. And you see this in every industry, right? There are, for example, there are stuff that might be a cheaper car, maybe, right? But someone who just wants something that drives isn't gonna look at, oh, this doesn't have ABS, this doesn't have, which I would be weird in 2025. This doesn't have lane assist. Doesn't have like a power steering, that kind of stuff. That's something that a layman wouldn't really think about. And then they see this host like going for $1 a month, right, or half a buck a month, and they're like, why is this more expensive? Then explain yourself why you're more expensive, and they'll give an explanation like, hey, we have more modern hardware, like they're using Ryzen 5s, we're using Ryzen 9s, that kind of stuff. And they would give you an answer like, oh, but only RAM works on Minecraft servers. I'm only interested in RAM. I don't need a better CPU, which isn't true. I have seen that exact point being made literally yesterday towards my face.
A very misconception in the industry,
Yes.
and this is the misconception I've tried to solve with multiple clients.
Yeah.
In the past. And by the way, any of my clients that may be watching this, I'm not throwing you under the bus here. I'm simply saying there is a massive misconception in the industry saying more RAM equals more performance. And this is what we've talked about privately,
Yeah.
Lunar, about the fact that yes, adding more RAM can add more performance, but there's a dependency. Is the JVM needing more RAM? Is the Minecraft server doing more garbage collection? Now, I'd like Arai to take the ropes on this one because he is very, very knowledgeable when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, like the JVM, the other thing is JVM is really complicated and the workloads are really complicated. So there is no simple answer. The actual real answer is when you find a acute performance degradation, you diagnose it, figure out what the root cause is, and solve it. So the question becomes, why is the core question is usually always, why is my server lagging? And
Yeah.
it's, that's why you look at the Spark profile. That's why you figure out if your CPU starved or if you're, it could be single core CPU starvation. We've seen cases of multiple core CPU starvation issues. We had an event server that had, it was several hundred, wasn't it?
Yes.
Users that were all running at the same time. And that server alone, when teleporting, if you teleport 200 players at one time, all of a sudden your netty load goes through the roof. And fortunately, netty is multi-threaded. So that server for that, 20 seconds of time would benefit from having access to 16 cores. And so the first time we ran the event, they did the teleport and it completely I think it disconnected like half the player base. It was pretty bad. We ran the event the second time around, and it was either was it 8 cores or was it 16?
Basically, what happened was we increased the netty cores, and I saw a spike of 1,600%.
Yeah, so it was 16 cores. So basically, that teleportation occurred instantly. Like everybody was teleported in less than a second. There was zero disruptive experience to the players. And that's the actual metric that matters.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. MSPT is better than TPS.
Well, it's like one thing that really caught my attention about your videos initially was this quest to find a metric to identify the quality of a Minecraft server host.
Yeah.
And I still think it's valuable. I like the idea of approaching that, saying, how can we measure this and how can we determine what a good hosting provider is from a technical perspective? I don't think using Chunky and calculating CPS is that metric, but I appreciate the search. Like, I really like the fact that you're like, hey, how can we measure this? How can we come up with this? And I've got ideas about how to approach it. I could be right. I could be wrong. Wouldn't be the first time either way.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to hijack the direction of the conversation too much just yet.
I'm just going to say on that point that quest is currently postponed until there's serious evidence that something like that can be attempted. Because someone who I have had in my DMs before has been very vocal about the fact that what I'm trying to do is impossible, and is saying that I'm damaging the community more than I'm helping, which if I look deeper, I have to agree that providing a metric that doesn't even work is actually not very helpful, because I have literally seen my testing data sheet, whatever, been thrown around in people's Discord saying like, oh, you guys suck. Well, all that it did was maybe test 6% of what a host actually does, because in all seriousness, nobody's going to experience that load in their gameplay.
No one.
No one will ever have that.
No.
I agree with that. My initial thinking was just I need something to compare these with, so let me just do the same test. That way, that test is what I'm comparing them to, which isn't indicative of anything else but how well they performed on that test, which was the original video.
But you had advantages from doing that test as well, because Modernth changed their configuration due to your video.
And then they changed it back. Yes, I can't tell you how many hosts have DM'd me asking like, hey, would you come on to a call in a meeting to discuss your findings because we want to change the value. Someone who has been on the channel as well, Shockbite, has done some stuff. They use a tool, a little bit more sophisticated tool to test for faults in a node. There's another host which I identified a faulty hardware fault with because of that test. You know, there are positive changes that happened with that CPS test, but there are also negative changes. And until I can rule out 99% of the negative impact of my testing, I am not testing anymore. I also need to just be more knowledgeable, you know? Like, I come off as knowledgeable, but I'm not a sysadmin. I'm not schooled in these things. These are all self-learned things. I know how to set up Pterodactyl with a blindfold at this point, but I mean, I'm not an expert, which I need to. That's why we have the Council of Wizards fact-checking everything I do, so that there's no misinformation out there.
Arai should be a part of these wizards. Anyway.
No.
The applications are open. If you actually have like certifications or receipts that you know what you're talking about, then you're welcome to join that.
I'll think about it.
Yeah, fair enough.
My major issue is time. It's something where I have so many different irons in the fire, so many different projects going on that I'm like, oh gosh, when am I gonna have time for this or that or whatever? Like, yeah, it's just there's so much going on, and that's the other thing that makes it really difficult to kind of. There are times I look at everything going on in this community and I just think to myself, why do I bother? And then there's other times where I'm just kind of like, you know, when I really am reminded that it is a channel for younger people to get interested in software development and, you know, really push themselves to see what they can do. That's I think probably the best part about it, in terms of a technical advantage to the Minecraft community. And I really wish a lot of people would still have that in mind. You know, there's so much drama, actually, to quote a channel in another Discord server, that's going on, that, you know, I just kind of look at it, I'm thinking to myself, why, guys? Is this really necessary? So
I agree.
I just grab the popcorn and enjoy the show. So
that's what else do you do? There's gonna be drama regardless of what you do.
That's true.
Hosts are constantly attacking each other.
And you mentioned before, Lunar, about other hosts trying to steal people from me. That still happens.
Bro, what the
You still have DMs disabled, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
There's such a... So, when I joined Lagless, or when I was doing, like, certain things in the admin craft, they were really, really attacking me because I was affiliate with Lagless, but I was still testing different servers, which I'm not blind to. That is leaving me open to biases, but that's why I have like people from competitors reviewing my stuff, because I don't want to be biased. I'm not in the sorry, I can't speak. I'm not in the market to misinform people for my own financial benefit. Right? Up until recently, I was happily employed and I didn't need the money. I'm now again employed and I still don't need the money. You know what I mean? I'm not doing this for money.
Yeah.
It's just a very dramatic issue in the entirety of the hosting community. There are people who want to work with each other, but there are also hosts that slander and well, actual slander and stuff, which I don't think we need to cover too much here.
People have been looking for a way to test Minecraft servers for a long time. Me and Arai have had the same conversation before. How do you really benchmark a Minecraft server? Because you can talk about, what hardware are they running on? What RAM are they using? Are they running NVMe's or SSDs? Are they running hard drives? Are they running a RAID configuration? There's all sorts of different complicated variables that you have to go through before you can come to some sort of conclusion on how you're actually going to benchmark it. Now, you said someone messaged you and said it's impossible. I'm sorry to say, a few years ago it was impossible. Well, not a few, but a long, long time ago it was impossible to fly.
Yeah.
So these things can be made possible by somebody intelligent.
Like the yes and the no. The question again about the testing is it's yes and no. Because again, like we said, is CPS the right testing metric? No. There's so many reasons that that's not going to work. Like some of the other proposed ideas I've seen is like doing benchmarking, like artificial benchmarking with like set seeds and like set procedural movement of entities around a map. It's like, that becomes really far away from, that's so far removed from the experience of operating and playing in a Minecraft server. I don't necessarily think it's relevant anymore. That's also, by the way, the problem with the CPS test is it's just completely unremoved from the normal user's experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's why an approach of, instead of benchmarking real-time metrics, I think is a better way to move forward with that, just because you're now just very accurately metering performance on a tick by tick basis on a server. And if you were to collect, let's say 4 to 5 data streams from servers of multiple users on one node, and then potentially combine that in aggregate to get a perspective of what's going on with that node, also combined in aggregate with other nodes provided by that service provider, you tend to get a much better representation of how that service provider handles the technical resources that they're doling out to their clients.
I understand that point, but that's like unless I have access in the backend provided by those things, by those providers or servers provided, so that's gonna be a very costly way of doing that, and a very time-consuming way of doing that. There's no way of really automating that process.
I think the best approach there is a packaged plugin, very much like Spark was originally, and it would dump it out to an aggregate, like a third-party aggregator, and that third party, I mean, you wouldn't be using REST. You'd most likely be using probably MQTT over WebSocket. Is most probably the correct technology to use for that. MQTT is binary payload, so you could even wrap that with something like streaming Z standard probably is your best bet, and you do the serialization, deserialization using can't think of it off the top of my head.
You might be going over people's head here, right?
Yeah, sorry, I'm getting into the technical weeds. The point is, there are ways to do it. Like, here's what's crazy. I was just thinking about this on the way out to my appointment earlier. A single region file actually has over 100 million points of data in it. If you consider the fact that you have a build height, the 384, and you have a X and Z of 512, you actually have like north of 100 million data points. So like Minecraft's already a big data problem. It's just like, how can we optimize the instrumentation to be able to handle that big data as well, and then represent it in a meaningful way to users to make informed decisions. So that is the nature of the problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lunar, you asked about how I got into the hobby.
Yeah,
basically, it was basically
I start
just to
talking
thrive
like
myself
this.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's
and then
fine. It's just I don't want to take this over the time that we're supposed to have a lap.
don't worry,
totally.
don't worry. We're only 30 minutes in. It's fine. But when you have someone this knowledgeable, I can understand why you would get into the hobby, because you got into the hobby because of Arai, right?
Yes, but I was already looking before Arai. Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to make something very clear to the users. Arai has not built what I built.
Yeah.
Arai has been there with the technical answers and technical questions that I've had. But
I'm the lifeguard. He actually did the swimming.
Yes, exactly. That's the analogy for you. Because some people, when I explain this to some people, they take it the inference that Arai is the technical guy, and I'm just sitting back and watching it happen and getting the money for it. No, that's not how this works. I'm the technical guy as well as the guy that does everything in the back end. Arai hosts my panel. Arai also deals with the backup server as well, because he's very knowledgeable when it comes to ZFS and SmartOS and all of that. So it makes it very easy. Arai hosts my panel because, he wanted to prove to me that it could be hosted on a distribution, an Ubuntu. It could
Not
be hosted on
Linux.
SmartOS, not Linux. It could be hosted on not Linux, even though the specifications do quote Linux and not SmartOS. So there we go.
He specifically looked at the Pterodactyl instructions, and the first time, I mean, I think everybody feels this the first time they install Pterodactyl, it's daunting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like usually somewhere past the fourth or fifth time, it becomes not nearly so bad. You get up into 8 to 10 times, and that's where the blindfolds come on.
Yeah, I can do it blindfolded like you, Lunar.
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah.
I could do it with one hand behind my back at this point.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of other like enterprise class software that's an absolute nightmare. Like a lot of people, one thing that has caught me is entertaining is there's a lot of this, again, like company good, hobby bad dynamic in the Minecraft server space. Like when you get into large corporate environments, you understand how absolutely horrible everything is, and you're really concerned. Like you're curious, how the heck does this actually run? It shouldn't. Like it really shouldn't. There's way too much like bubblegum and duct tape on this thing for it to work properly. But here we are. So
yeah, and that was my drive. I looked at all these Minecraft hosts and I was asking Arai, how do they do it? How do they have a web interface connect to a server and build a Minecraft server after someone has purchased it via PayPal or whatever? And that's what drove me to build Minestone, is the want to learn and the want to know how to do these things.
And Pterodactyl became visible at that point. Because I mean, at that time we were using Multicraft. Like that was the only panel that was really available at that point.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, technically Pterodactyl started in 2015, but I mean most open source projects are like really obscure until they're not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this echoes very close to my heart as well, because I started in this hobby as well as someone who wanted to learn, right? I worked for a friend of mine, or who was a friend of mine at the time, who had his own server hosting thing, but only like for big servers, right? So he would set it up for big servers and maintain them, like kind of like a sysop. And they recruited me on like helping in the back end, knowing I didn't know anything, and he was very clear from the start: you need to figure out things on your own. You have me to help you, but for a certain point, I'm not going to answer you anymore. That evolved into my nephew, who works in data centers, who owns a data center here in Zaventem, who said, like, I have a few servers in Iraq which aren't used anymore. Here you go. Do whatever the fuck you want with them. And he helped me set up Pterodactyl. He helped me set up it in an environment where it's safe, like the whole having a VPN where only you can tunnel into and nobody can get to the actual like VM, because we're using VMware. Nobody can log into the VMware from a distance. You can only log in when you're using this VPN tunnel, and all that kind of like closing all the ports, making sure nobody can backend into it. And it's only because I had that I had any chance of learning, which is an important factor here. People should learn. People should not just always take the easy way out, because self-hosting isn't always the solution. Let's be real here. There are plenty of people who can't. I can't self-host because if I do, I have to pay $25 a month in electricity. That's way too much for me. I just, in this case, get a free server with my partner, but I just buy one because it's cheaper for me. But you should still want to experiment and learn.
I
Definitely
recently
no.
had to turn off my local dedicated machine that I had at home
Because of prices.
because
Yep,
of
power.
prices. Exactly, power.
Yep.
It was using too much power in the household, and I recently had to turn it off, and I no longer have a home lab.
Same. I have my literal rack in the attic, which I just have completely turned off because I can't.
Yeah, I can't afford it anymore.
Yeah, this is nuts. Like I pay
Yeah.
$250 in electricity bills. That's insane. Like turning that off already reduced it by 30. So
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know how people do it. Anyway,
Really cheap power.
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, and
I
finding those
never,
locations is a challenge.
as far as hosting at home now, it's. I watched a video recently about how back in the day when it used to be you'd start your Minecraft server and you post it on Planet Minecraft, you get tons of players.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It used to be like that. Now, it's not simple anymore. It's not. You can't really host a Minecraft at home, a Minecraft server at home, especially given that some people's internet certainly can't support it. You don't need like a gigabit symmetric internet to host a Minecraft server. Certainly not. But what I'm getting at is that you need things like DDoS protection. People use TCP Shield or NeoProtect, but that's still costing money. Why not buy from a host that already has this infrastructure in place and use them? I mean, some people will say they can't afford it, blah, all of whatever reason they
Some
have.
some hosting providers roll their own. I am very much looking forward to that video, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes,
Because
I'm as well.
I am having Kevin from Pufferfish come in to talk about their custom version of DDoS protection. I also am in talks with the person at NeoProtect to talk about it. I have a few hosts who want to come on the record and explain how much we pay. I can say for our lagless, for us, we pay $250 a month. Just for or is it 500? I need to check, but it's anywhere between 250 to north of $500 for NeoProtect for DDoS protection. It's an expensive market, but it's very interesting to see how they mitigate it. Because at the end of the day, a layman knows a DDoS attack just puts down a server, but they don't know how. Okay, yeah,
I don't pay anything for my DDoS protection.
Cool. It's sorry, what?
I don't pay anything for my DDoS protection.
Oh, well, because you're getting it from upstream.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that. I'm sorry to say, I feel in my personal opinion, I feel every dedicated server provider that's throwing out hardware should have this in place.
Yes.
Well, it's yeah, like if you consider the fact that Minecraft, gosh, what was the name of it? Meraki? Was it Meraki? Arai. The Mirai botnet was actually originally created to go after Minecraft servers.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
FBI actually relocated their cyber crimes division to Anchorage, Alaska, to go after Mirai. So like a lot of people don't recognize that. Probably not the only reason. There's probably a few other reasons they moved there, but China. But beyond that, like Minecraft is a huge focal point for DDoS specifically. Consider the fact that you have projects like Koppenheimer. It is Koppenheimer, right? That was the Fifth Elements
Yeah. Yeah.
scanner.
Yeah.
So you have projects like that are basically like scanning the entirety of the internet every like less than completely over like once every 45 minutes. Like that's incredible when you think about it.
You wouldn't believe the amount, Luna. You wouldn't believe the amount of IP addresses from bots that I see in the client's terminals. Client window, where they see the console log. You can see an IP address and know it's a bot immediately because at the end of the string it says hello.
Lamo.
Like it's incredible from a technical perspective that all this is going on, and it's like when you're running Minecraft servers, you're actually at the forefront of probably like DDoS research and DDoS mitigation.
Yep, which is why I'm with the hosts I'm currently with, is because they have that in place already, and I feel I encourage hosts out there when they're searching for dedicated machines, go with somebody that has this mitigation in place already.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
you shouldn't have to pay these extraordinary prices for DDoS protection. I know it's complicated, and I know it's very difficult to mitigate these attacks, but there are people out there that already have these things in place, and I feel everybody should have these things in place. If you're selling dedicated machines, you should have some sort of DDoS mitigation in place. What I disagree with, the biggest thing I disagree with, is providers that promote DDoS protection. Then you get DDoS and your server goes down.
Yeah.
You ask
Yeah.
them what's going on, and they turn to you and they say, "Oh, our DDoS is the best we can do.
Well,
We don't guarantee it."
like
Yeah.
the fallback DDoS protection has always been black holing an IP, and that's literally removing an IP from the global routing table. So basically, all the
internet.
world's you're literally telling the world's routers, "Hey, this IP literally doesn't exist anymore. Send it to DevNull."
Yeah.
And like
And when
that's
you have
been
multiple clients on that IP address, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
huge problem. Like VoIP providers back in the 2010s had that problem quite a bit. And it's crazy because like we haven't the technology has progressed pretty slowly. Like you have response technologies like FlowSpec that have come up, and the entirety of FlowSpec is instead of basically black holing everything sent to one IP, you can actually black hole the traffic signature. So you can say, hey, traffic from this IP range, these ports, this IP range, these ports, this protocol, that can go away. And that's definitely a move in the right direction. You have some of the advantages of, say, Anycast and your ability to distribute load across multiple routes in ways that would not be available for Unicast. That's cool, but that's very much more like the network centric side of doing DDoS mitigation. Then there's a question of, okay, what can you do much closer to the actual host that's being impacted? So normally it would be throw something like, for instance, the really naive approach would be throw something like send cookies at it and be cool. The thing that catches me as interesting about Kevin's approach is it appears, and this has just been me picking his brain. Kevin, if you're listening, I'm sorry. This has been me picking his brain and figuring out exactly what he put together and how he put it together. It seems like it's a DDoS, or excuse me, it seems like it's a TCP proxy that actually does the initial TCP handshake and then gets out of the way,
Yeah.
but not completely. So again, I'm it's one of those things where the tinker in me and the technical interest in me is really curious to see exactly what it is that he's come up with and how that is significantly better or distinct from anything else that's out there. So there's a lot of companies that do DDoS. And again, to quote uh to quote Kevin, it's like, yeah, they're doing it wrong, and it's like, well, okay, let's see how you're doing it better, which apparently he's doing something right. So
Yeah, it
love to see
works.
that.
It works. It's an interesting thing. But again, to come back on the whole summer host things, I believe it's
Yeah.
just do you think it's a issue of people just not knowing or not caring enough about the subject matter to make an informed decision, or at least not call everything they don't agree with a summer host?
Both.
I think it's the
a little both.
misunderstanding. The misunderstanding.
We got two different answers here, but Andy, why don't you go first?
Sorry.
That's fine.
What did you say, Arai? I didn't hear Arai's response.
I said both. So I think it's both not understanding and not caring was my answer.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it could be both. Yeah, but I think the biggest one is the misunderstanding. There's a in this industry, people don't understand what summer host means. They don't understand the definition of it, and anyone that wants to start a host is quote a summer host.
Yeah.
And that for me, that for Minestone especially, it feels like, oh, because I'm not doing it the way that every other host is doing it, I'm a summer host, and it's unfair, and I think it needs to be corrected. in this industry. I'm giving my clients the services they want, and at a good rate, and they have good performance, and I help them. If any of the service is lagging, they know they can submit a ticket in my Discord, and they will get help from me.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
that's just it. That's exactly what I've always wanted, that sort of communication with anyone I'm with when it comes to dedicated machines, VPSs that I bought in the past, anything. I've always wanted that direct, being able to go into a Discord, create a ticket, and have someone respond, not having to go on a website, create a ticket, and then get a response within 24 hours. No,
And have it handed
if
off.
it's dire and it needs to be dealt with now, and you have clients that are suffering, then you need that instant response. You need that one-to-one communication.
Yeah, I agree. Which is
Sorry
not
to interrupt.
something. No, it's fine. I'm gonna give you in a second, but I think it's not
Sure.
really possible to do that. What you want to do as a actual, like, what we would call, I'll call it a traditional public-facing host. You can't do that because you have too many clients. But what you're doing is way better for people who want that one-on-one experience. Go ahead, Arai.
I think probably the best example of that was, not to name names, but one of the service providers we were looking at upstream for a period of time, handing the ticket off to 3 different support agents, none of which had any context or awareness of what was going on in the situation.
Nice.
So
there were actually, it was a client that came to me not too long ago. Sorry to interrupt you, Rai, but I know the story you're talking about. Not going to name any names, but this client came to me after experiencing 3 different support agents in a ticket arguing with each other on how to solve the situation.
Lamau.
I remember that story.
That's nuts.
Polite and professional. Yeah.
That's nuts. I mean, the thing is, right, at the end of the day, you're spending money, and there are traditional hosts, traditional public-facing hosts, who like to make. There are a lot of people with good intentions in this industry. Well, let's not kid ourselves, but there are also a lot of people with bad intentions. There are hosts who snipe other people's clients. You would not believe the amount of people who DM me asking to be partnered with them, even though I am partnered with Lagless and I have a job at Lagless. You know, like, dude, what the fuck are you even trying?
I hear some of them are actually sponsored by Amazon, so it might be a good idea to jump ship, right?
Oh boy, sponsored by Amazon, right? Yeah, totally not using free AWS credits for every startup company, then removing that company, starting a new company, and then going on as if nothing happened. Sure, man. You know what? Next time I'll join. Yeah, next time I'll join the. There's another host that I hear is good in Romania or something, right? No, there are people who want to dictate what a good host is, but there are people who just want to establish a good consumer guide, right? I think the people in Admincraft, over the many talks I've had in there, good and bad, I still believe that most of the people in there have good intentions. They want to make sure that they're kind of policing their own domain, because people can just pop up, get the money, people's data can be harvested, and then they're gone. You know what I mean? But at the same time, they're also not very attentive to the fact that some of their actions, like calling everything a summer host, also includes people who do a more intimate kind of hosting, like you are doing, Andy, where you have a one-on-one conversation with people and actually advise them on, because you told me this in private, you advise them that is a better option, don't use that much RAM, go for that kind of stuff.
Where other hosts, if you go into a ticket and your server is lagging, I've seen it happen in the past where people would open a ticket, complain their server's lagging, and the immediate response for the host is upgrade your RAM. Without any investigation, without any research of what's actually happening, upgrade your memory. Give us more money.
Yep.
I mean, if in your specific case, because your case has has some advantages but also disadvantages, like any approach does. In your specific case, you're not motivated by exponential growth like some of the other
No.
hosts are, right? You are just happy with paying off what your costs are, and if that generates a little bit of passive income, that's great.
Great. Yeah, exactly.
But there are like negatives involved with doing it this way, I believe. Do you happen to know any that you can spot immediately?
The waiting around. People that want a service from me have to wait.
Mm-hmm.
That's one disadvantage.
Yeah.
The time and expertise commitment is another one.
Another one, yeah. I have to put a lot of time and a lot of effort into it. I mean, I've had people in the past, they would ask me to configure something for them
Mm-hmm.
and then complain about it
Oh,
Okay.
how about
because they complain about it because their players are complaining about the fact that I've lowered the amount of entities that are spawning on the map.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you know this, Lunar. I'm sure you do. It's a requirement when you have X amount of players. You have to lower the entity.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Entities are a killer on a Minecraft server. They will destroy your server's performance.
Oh, for sure.
So
Yeah.
if you don't configure that and lower it, you're going to have problems.
Andy, you remember that one client where you went in and you basically fixed their configuration and then they came right back in afterwards and changed it back and then complained in a ticket?
Yeah. So basically, I went in and fixed something for him. He then went in and deleted it, basically, had it regenerate, and then complained again. And I said, sorry, didn't I already change this? Yeah, you did, but I wanted to go back and try it again.
I mean, that's just individual people, that's individual frustrations, which is still frustrating and can be a negative side, like just for like the host itself, like spending that much time personally configuring something for someone and they just go back on you. That's frustrating. That's not something that happens when you don't have that much of an intimate connection to your, well, it sounds intimate. It sounds like you're kissing him on the cheek or something, but you have a
It's worse
one-on-one.
than that.
Oh boy, you have a one-on-one relationship with some of your clients. You configure stuff for them, and if they don't listen, that's doubly frustrating than just getting a ticket from a random client 1355 saying that their server's a little bit wacky.
Yeah, it's just it's a not knowing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Some people need that one-to-one basis to understand what they're doing, or have me help them basically get them started. So but I have to set expectations. I think this is where I was going with this. I have to set expectations, Luna. If anyone comes to me and expects me to build them a Hypixel, they are very misinformed. I'm gonna help you with the basics of setting up your Minecraft server, but I am not going to sit here and build you a full-on game server or go out and configure every single plugin for you. That is not going to happen.
No,
I will help you as much as I can, but there has to be
a limit,
a little bit of restriction there,
mm-hmm.
because I can't do it. And this is what I do with all my clients. I explain to them, I can help you, but I can't build you a server.
Yeah, you can't run it, essentially.
Yeah, I can't run it for them, because I've had it in the past where someone would install a plugin. Oh, can you configure this plugin for me? Can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? And I'm talking every day on me about wanting them basically having me build their server for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they're not paying me any money to do it. And it's like I basically had to stop it and say, I can't do this for you. I can help you if your server's lagging. I can configure basic things like setting up the server properties, or going in and changing something that's one line. But I cannot sit there and build you Hypixel, or build you Donut SMP, or build you a massive SMP. It's just not happening.
Yeah, I don't think that's a great. Well,
it's not a reasonable expectation.
It's not a reasonable expectation. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. I think we covered a lot of ground that we wanted to cover. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before I hit this blue stop recording button?
Didn't you have more questions for me?
I think we answered, because we had, what was the questions that we had, right? We had Why did you start? What that kind of stuff? Well, let me get the questions specifically. So, for those who don't know, we usually on this podcast send a few questions beforehand so that people on this podcast can kind of just prepare and not be thrown into this without any preparation. So the questions I had sent you is, how did you get into this hobby? I think we covered that. How did Minestone Hosting get started? I think we covered that as well. Why did you go private? That's also covered. And what was your feeling on the term of summer host? I think that's covered as well. Grantly, right?
Yeah. As far as how Minestone got hearts, yeah, that's covered. Why did we decide to go private? Well, yeah, we basically went through that. It was just because of the not wanting to deal with people telling me my prices were wrong. And the feeling towards Summerhost is I don't like it. That's the end of that, really. I disagree with the term. I think it sets a precedent in the industry that anyone that's labeled as that is a bad host, and I don't agree with it because they don't have WHMCS set up. And I've told you in the past, I just want to get this out real quick. Just for anyone that is watching the podcast, I have already been through setting up WHMCS. I just want to make this very clear. I've already been there. I've had a website. I've done all of these things. So anyone that wants to say, oh, you've never done it, so you're not really experienced. Well, no, I have done it. I've been there. I've set up automatic billing. I've set up a website. I've set up all the things that current hosts have.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to deal with every day, oh, your prices are too high. Your prices are too high, because any host out there that is watching this video, you need to set a price and leave it as that. Giving out coupons that are 50% off, you're ruining yourself. If you set your price as is and leave it as is without giving out these ridiculous coupons and stuff like that, because Arai, you know, I made that mistake.
Again, a race to the bottom is
A
what
race
you
to the bottom.
engaged in.
Yes, that's
And it was-
exactly it.
Yeah, I mean,
that's all I've got to say on that.
No, that's fine. I mean, there is indeed a trend where everybody. That's also why I kept out the part where, like, when you first buy a server, there's usually a coupon code. I always keep that out of the video because at the end of the day, you're not paying that amount monthly. You're paying it once, and then you pay monthly this much. You know.
Well, I've seen. Well, we've talked about it previously in a private call. I'm not going to name names again. They have 50% off lifetime.
Yeah. Why?
Well, and you tried doing
Why?
that.
I did.
You tried to follow it, and that demoralized you horribly.
Yeah, and that's
So-
what these hosts are doing. They're demoralizing themselves. They're looking at themselves and listening to the people that don't want to have to pay the prices, and that's going to kill them.
I think that's the major source of vitriol from legitimate hosts calling other hosts summer hosts is because of the effect it has in the market.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, there is certainly a financial incentive to discredit your other host. It's just not very nice, you know. And I don't think any credible host doesn't do that.
No.
I don't think any host that respects the scene and respects itself. You don't see Shockbite publicly name calling other hosts. You don't see let's just say Pufferfish or whatever publicly name calling other hosts and saying you suck. You know, that's not what happens.
No,
That
that is
thing with
complete.
Bloom, right? Yeah, fuck.
That dynamic, and again, that happened, and then it very quickly cleaned up. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I don't think it's. I don't think
It's that
anyone.
whole thing. If you've got nothing nice to say, don't say it.
Yeah, because all you're doing is just creating a precedent for everybody else to name call everybody else.
And honestly, you're making yourself look immature.
That too.
polite,
Making yourself look immature.
polite and professional should be what we're all aiming for.
Yep.
Exactly. We're all trying to do a thing that's the same. Why are we not on the same page here?
Yep. Exactly. Well, I think we talked for a good amount of length. I do agree with the last few points being raised here. And yeah, I think we've made a clearer point that not everybody who doesn't do a public host like you are doing, you're doing more like a one-to-one experience. Not everybody who doesn't do a traditional public-facing host is a summer host, but it's always good to be careful with who you decide to give money to.
Absolutely.
All right,
Yes.
in that case, I think I will thank you all for being here.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. And if you ever want to do anything like this again with multiple other people or just me and Arai again, I would be absolutely willing to join.
I'll be
And,
sure. I'll be sure to
continue
invite you to
our,
the giant shouting match.
Yeah, we'll wade to the stairs that go up out of your basement.
Good. My personal
Yeah.
bodyguard.